Hocus Pocus 2 was directed by Anne Fletcher and stars Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. 30 years after their original return to Salem, the Sanderson Sisters are back to wreak havoc on our modern society. I grew up with Hocus Pocus as a kid. I wasn't a child of the 90s, but I still saw reruns every single year around Halloween. And obviously, I loved it. Back in the day, I thought it was so funny. And after growing up, even though I don't love it, and I wouldn't even necessarily call it a legitimately good movie, I still enjoy it on a guilty pleasure level, and I still watch it every single year around Halloween. Well, I should say that I love it enough in the fact that when I first saw the trailer for Hocus Pocus 2, I thought it was going to bomb. Even though it was only being released to streaming, I had no hope for this movie. I was hoping that the Sanderson Sisters would be good, but for the most part, I thought, no, there's no way this can be any good. This has to be the epitome of a cash grab. And even though, yeah, on some level I was almost completely right, I still enjoyed a lot of it. So when talking about the good things about any Hocus Pocus movie, what could possibly be the highlight of Hocus Pocus? It's the Sanderson Sisters. I honestly thought there was no way that these three actresses could capture the energy that they had with each other 30 years ago. But in this movie, I was completely proven wrong. They are by far the best part about the whole movie, and every single time they are on screen together, it's always entertaining. Even when the writing for them isn't really great, the actresses all have an insane amount of chemistry and bring an insane amount of energy into their performances as to make their performances funny, even though the writing can sometimes be lacking. There is a scene in this movie that seems like a carbon copy of the classic "I Put a Spell on You" bit from the first movie. And in this movie, I'll be honest, at first I was like, oh no, this isn't gonna be as good, the music isn't as good. And then like a minute into the bit, I was completely sold because the actresses had an insane amount of awesome choreography and energy and singing talent to their performances, along with the audience who they're performing this for, who choreograph their dances alongside them. Even though I'm sure this isn't a shock to anyone, the Sanderson Sisters are by far the best, most entertaining, and funniest part of this whole movie. And if I'm being completely honest, that pretty much does it for everything great that I have to say about this movie. But even then, even though that's one quality of the movie, that is a huge quality. So with that being said, every single time that the Sanderson Sisters were on screen, they were almost always funny. The rest of the actors and the rest of the writing when it comes to the joke is sort of hit and miss. I will give credit where credit is due. Every, I would say, 10 minutes, there is a legitimately chuckle-worthy moment. And to be 100% honest, the boyfriend in this movie I thought was hilarious. Every single time he opened his mouth, I got a huge laugh. But the other characters like the mayor and the shopkeeper and even Billy Butcherson, I never really got that big of laughs out of. Though to be fair, even though some of the jokes in this movie really don't work, they're not necessarily cringe-worthy jokes, they just sort of fall flat with no reaction and then they move on. However, where the all-out problems are concerned, let's start with the pacing, because the pacing in this movie feels extremely rushed. If there is any lifelessness complaint that can be had about this movie, I do think it is because the pacing of this movie is extremely rushed. In the first 20 minutes or so, we barely know anything about our three main characters of the film, and they immediately get on to the Sanderson Sisters returning. And even though, yeah, to be fair, that is what people want to see when they see a Hocus Pocus film, in the first movie, at least we had a considerable amount of time with Max and the other main characters, getting to know them a tiny bit before the Sanderson Sisters came onto the screen. It feels like a lot of this movie is on fast forward through a lot of carbon copy bits from the original film, and even though the Sanderson Sisters do have enough energy to disguise all of that copying, it's still obviously there. But again, to be fair, maybe they're rushing through a lot of the plot of this movie because the main characters are so awful. The three of them are so boring and so lifeless, especially compared to the Sanderson sisters, that every single time they were on screen, it felt like they dragged the movie to a halt. There is significant drama amongst them that drives them throughout the majority of the movie, and that drama I could care less about because I know nothing about these main characters, and honestly, they are so boring, I don't really want to know anything about them. And lastly, we have the ending, which, from what I can gather about other people's reactions to this film, is by far the most hated part of the movie. Without necessarily giving a ton away, do you know how everyone, for the most part, hated Maleficent because it took a character who everyone loved because she was so evil and made her sympathetic in a schmaltzy way? Yeah, they do the same thing with the Sanderson sisters in this movie. And even though, to be fair, I get the idea behind this move, it's not really what we love about the Sanderson sisters. We love them because they are so out of touch. We love them because they are so obliviously evil. We don't love them necessarily because of love or something schmaltzy like that. If anything, the sisters from the first movie would practically spit on their adaptation in this film. So yeah, there is a lot about this movie that really doesn't work, but to be fair, the one part about this movie that does work is a huge part of the movie. The Sanderson sisters are once again absolutely fantastic in this film as they bring all of the great energy, charisma, and comedic timing that so many people loved them for in the first film. But whether it's the hit and miss comedy, the rushed pacing, the bland main characters, or the disappointing ending, I can't see this being the Halloween staple that the first film is. It's entertaining enough that I don't regret watching it, but I can't really say it was entertaining enough for me to keep rewatching it on the same level that, even though I don't necessarily love the first Hocus Pocus, I still constantly rewatch that movie. I'm going to give Hocus Pocus 2 a C. Well guys, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite Halloween guilty pleasure? I know I've probably said this answer before, but thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best, and don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.